For most of human history, to walk through a city was to breathe it in, not the clean, conditioned air of modern life, but something far more intimate: horse sweat and chimney smoke, boiling dye vats and sour bread, rotting cabbage, tanneries, rain-drenched wool. The world did not hide its scent, it announced itself. In the 19th century, as cities swelled and industry surged, these smells thickened into something more than background. They became a problem, a warning, a theory of disease, and in time, they were scrubbed away by sewers, by science, by silence. But what did we lose when we stopped smelling the city? To answer that, we must return to a time when every breath carried the truth of how a city lived and how it struggled to stay alive. Before the 19th century, smell was not a warning, it was a condition of existence. Human life unfolded inside a constant cloud of organic scent: wood smoke from hearths, animals tethered in courtyards, food curing in open air, bodies working and aging without regular washing. These odors were not categorized as clean or unclean in the modern sense. They were signals, familiar and expected, woven into daily routine. Cities, towns, and villages shared this sensory language. Smoke meant warmth and cooking. Manure meant animals nearby and food production continuing. Sweat meant labor. Rot meant time passing. The nose learned to interpret rather than recoil. Smell carried information about proximity, activity, and survival. It told people where bread was baked, where animals were kept, where work was being done. It did not yet imply danger or neglect. It implied life. This world lacked the technologies that would later separate humans from their own byproducts. There were no sealed pipes to carry waste away invisibly, no chemical soaps to neutralize scent, no deodorants to erase bodily presence. Water was heavy and precious. Heat was inconsistent. Cleaning was labor, not routine. Clothing absorbed the history of days and weeks. Homes breathed outward rather than being closed systems. Importantly, this sensory environment was shared across class, though not equally. Elites enjoyed distance and space, but they did not inhabit an odorless world. Even palaces smelled of smoke, wax, bodies, animals, and damp stone. Fragrance masked rather than replaced the underlying atmosphere. No one yet expected the air itself to be neutral. In this pre-deodorized world, smell did not represent failure. It represented continuity. It reminded people that cities were biological places, collections of breathing, eating, working bodies bound together in space. The expectation that air should be clean, silent, and empty had not yet emerged. That idea would come later, when cities changed faster than their systems could adapt. In the early 19th century, cities began to change not just in scale, but in compression. Population surged inward. Walls were torn down or overflowed. Where once there had been courtyards, now rose tenements. Where lanes had been wide enough for carts, now thousands walked shoulder to shoulder. What had been background, the slow drift of odor, the faint smell of stables or smoke, became pressure. Sensory weight increased by the block. Paris, London, New York, Mumbai, these cities did not just grow, they became densities. Their bodies were stacked, housed, and pushed into spaces that had not been designed for this volume of human life. Waste, breath, food preparation, disease, and decay all happened in tighter proximity, and as the number of interactions multiplied, so too did the residue. What might have dissipated in a village now lingered. The city began to smell not of moments, but of accumulation. Animals remained essential. Horses pulled trams, wagons, and carriages, leaving behind tons of manure each day. Pigs roamed alleys. Chickens scratched beside barrels. Dogs were left to their own devices. This animal presence, once pastoral, now mingled with coal, smoke, human waste, uncollected refuse, and damp stone. The air did not clear at night. It thickened. These conditions were not immediately considered unnatural. the city was still seen as an extension of the organic world. People tolerated what their predecessors had tolerated, only now in concentrations that altered perception. Smell crossed a threshold. It ceased to signal individual acts and began to describe the system itself. And once odor became systemic, it became inescapable. It clung to clothing, seeped through walls, and entered lungs without pause. People adapted, but the adaptation was not comfort. It was endurance. Density had changed everything, not just how cities sounded or looked, but how they smelled, moment by moment, block by block. In the 19th century, cities generated more waste than they could remove. The biological byproducts of dense human life, urine, feces, food scraps, dead animals, coal ash, did not vanish. They settled. They accumulated in gutters, soaked into soil, lingered in courtyards, and leaked from every structure where people lived. The smells that emerged were not metaphors. They were evidence of systems overwhelmed and bodies packed into space faster than infrastructure could follow. Most households lacked internal sanitation. In working-class districts, residents shared outdoor privies or cesspits, emptied infrequently by contractors known as night soil men. These men worked under cover of darkness, hauling human waste by the barrel or bucket, sometimes storing it nearby for resale as fertilizer. But demand was inconsistent and removal was costly. In many cities, privies overflowed before they were emptied. Their contents leached into cellars, seeped through foundations, or spilled into open streets during storms. Open drains carried household waste along the edges of roads. Where gradients allowed, it flowed outward. Where the ground was flat, it stagnated. Children played beside these streams. Laundry was washed in them. Food was sold near them. The air in such quarters carried a permanent undertone of fermentation, rot, and damp. Refuse a reminder that decomposition was a constant companion. Animal waste added to the burden. A single city horse could produce 20 to 30 pounds of manure per day. Multiply that by tens of thousands, and add the urine of dogs, pigs, and livestock moved through market lanes. The result was a thickened, layered cityscape where walking became negotiation, not just around people, but around matter. In this world, the smell of waste was not a mistake. It was a reflection. It revealed the limits of disappearance. The modern assumption that waste exits the city quietly, invisibly, did not yet exist. In the 19th century city, waste lingered. It returned. It announced itself. And in doing so, it told the truth. The city was not yet clean. It was merely in motion, pressing its refuse from one corner to the next. As cities modernized, a new category of smell joined the urban landscape, one not born from bodies or waste, but from combustion, chemistry, and production. By the mid-19th century, industrial odors began to define the air of cities as much as uncollected filth. And unlike organic decay, these new scents were mechanical, bitter, metallic, unnatural to the human nose, and yet increasingly common. Coal was the foundation. Its smoke poured from factory chimneys, domestic grates, gasworks, and locomotives. In cold weather, the soot-laden haze thickened to a visible fog. It clung to windows, clothing, and lungs. The smell was acrid half dust, half fire, settling into the skin and blackening the morning light. The city no longer simply smelled, lived in. It smelled scorched. Tanneries brought another layer. Animal skins soaked in lime, urine, and rotting flesh emitted a stench so intense that entire districts were marked by it. Slaughterhouses, too, left a mark. Blood, offal, and bone rendered into usable products within city limits. Breweries added sourness, glue factories added acid, and candle makers boiled fat in open vats. Chemical works, many of them poorly regulated, leaked ammonia, chlorine, and sulfur into the streets. These smells were not incidental. They were structural. Industries located within cities to be near labor, transport, and markets. Proximity was economic logic. Complaints rose. but remedies were rare. To control odor was to challenge production, and for much of the century, production prevailed. The industrial city was, in effect, a furnace without boundaries. Its wealth was visible in cranes and bricks, but its cost was carried in the wind. The air turned into a commons, shared unequally, but few escaped entirely. Coal dust did not respect districts, nor did wind. Industry changed not just what cities produced, but how they smelled, transforming air into infrastructure and leaving the human body to absorb what pipes and policy did not yet carry away. The smell of the 19th century city did not only come from its streets, factories, or drains, it also came from its people. The human body, shaped by labor, limited water access, and thick, infrequently washed clothing, carried its own persistent atmosphere. It was not unusual. It was expected. Most workers washed irregularly. Indoor plumbing was rare, and bathtubs were a luxury. Water had to be fetched, heated, poured. Even when available, it was used sparingly, first for cooking, then for cleaning household items, and only lastly for the body. In colder climates, winter made full bathing impractical. People wiped themselves with cloth, washed hands and faces, and changed undergarments when possible. But daily showers, modern hygiene routines, and chemical deodorants did not yet exist. Clothing extended this reality. Heavy woolen garments were worn for weeks or months between washings. Layers absorbed smoke, sweat, and dust. Undergarments soaked in the exertion of long days spent in factories, kitchens, shipyards, and marketplaces. There was no synthetic fabric to wick moisture, no detergent to fully cleanse. The result was a slow accumulation bodies that did not smell bad in the modern sense, but simply human, intensified by proximity, repetition, and heat. Enclosed spaces, tenements, boarding houses, factory floors, the air was saturated. Breath, exertion, and shared ventilation created a scent memory that travelers and diarists often described. Smell was background. For the elite, it became a marker of class, a justification for distance, dismissal, or reform. But this was not about neglect. It was structure. Cleanliness required time, privacy, infrastructure. Most people lacked all three. The scent of labor was not chosen. It was imposed. And within the systems of 19th century cities, the human body became not just a laboring unit, but a mobile source of odor, natural, persistent, and woven into the atmosphere of the city itself. Long before germ theory reshaped medicine, people understood that cities made them sick, but they did not yet know how. What they did know was that disease seemed to follow stench. Neighborhoods with foul air suffered more deaths. Households near sewers or slaughterhouses endured more fever. And so, across the 19th century, a powerful theory took hold: miasma, the idea that bad air itself was the source of illness. Miasma theory was not superstition. It was a rational model built from observation. It explained why fevers were common in poor districts, why cholera struck hardest in the slums, why outbreaks followed summer heat and stagnant canals. Smell was interpreted as a warning, tangible evidence that the air had become corrupted, poisoned by decay and overcrowding. It was not just unpleasant, it was dangerous. This belief shaped cities. Homes were built with higher ceilings and larger windows to improve airflow. Wide boulevards were praised for clearing the air. Green spaces were planted not only for beauty, but to purify the urban atmosphere. Hospitals relocated to breezier outskirts. Entire burial grounds were moved when their odors were feared to be infecting nearby tenements. Miasma theory also shaped class boundaries. The poor were not only seen as vulnerable to disease, they were seen as its source. Their crowded homes, shared latrines, and grimy clothing made them suspect. Smell became a social marker. To smell bad was to risk contagion, or worse, to embody it. Reformers rallied for slum clearance and sanitary reform, not only to ease suffering, but to cleanse the city of what they believed was toxic air. In retrospect, Miasma theory was wrong, but it was not useless. It accelerated real improvements. Sewers were built, waste removed, ventilation improved. Cities became more livable, in part because people feared smell, as if it were death itself. And while the science later shifted, the logic endured. Even today, the association between odor and health, between clean air and safety, remains embedded in how we design and inhabit urban space. By the mid-19th century, smell had become more than a sensory nuisance. It had become a problem of governance. Public health officials, engineers, and reformers began to understand that managing the urban atmosphere was essential to maintaining both order and life. And so, across Europe and North America, cities took their first coordinated steps to bring odor under control. The most ambitious of these efforts began underground. Vast sewer networks were planned, debated, and dug beneath crowded streets. In Paris, Baron Haussmann's redesign included wide boulevards not just for aesthetics or military control, but to house new drainage systems. In London, Joseph Bazalgette's massive brick tunnels diverted human waste away from the Thames. These projects took years, absorbed massive budgets, and disrupted daily life. But they marked a turning point. The city began to conceal what it could not yet eliminate. Above ground, street cleaning became routine. Carts scraped up manure. Gutters were flushed. Scavengers were hired to collect bones, ashes, and scraps before they fermented in the heat. Regulation targeted industries with the most offensive emissions. Slaughterhouses were moved out of city centers. Tanneries and rendering plants were relocated to peripheral zones. Water infrastructure advanced in tandem. Public wells and pumps were replaced by pressurized systems, delivering cleaner water into homes and reducing the need for shared, often contaminated sources. Burial practices were reformed. Cemeteries once crammed into urban churchyards were closed or moved outward as the smell of decomposition became politically unacceptable. None of these changes were total or immediate. Cities remained odorous, but the idea had shifted. Where smell had once been tolerated as part of urban life, it was now framed as a failure of design, a remnant of disorder. And from that shift came new expectations that a city could and should regulate the air itself. As cities modernized, the disappearance of urban smell did not happen equally. It followed the lines of wealth, infrastructure, and influence. Deodorization was not a universal achievement. It was a selective privilege, and it moved neighborhood by neighborhood, street by street, often bypassing those who lacked the political voice or economic power to demand it. In affluent quarters, underground sewer connections arrived first. Pressurized water systems became standard. Street lighting and paving made cleaning easier. Industrial activities were zoned away. The air itself became part of the elite domestic sphere, something to be regulated, enclosed, and refined. Scented soaps, perfumes, and flowers masked what little intrusion remained. In these districts, the smell of the city, once a shared condition, faded into memory. But just a few blocks away, in tenements and laboring districts, smell endured. Here, dozens of people might share a single outdoor privy. Waste collection remained irregular. Animal stables and craft workshops remained close to where people lived. Air carried the weight of proximity to rot, to labor, to life lived without separation. For these communities, odor remained not just a nuisance, but an unavoidable marker of place. Smell became a class boundary. To smell clean was to signal status. To be associated with odor was to be read as careless, inferior, or diseased. And so, as deodorization advanced, it did not just reshape the city's atmosphere, it reshaped social perception. This asymmetry persisted. Even today, the legacy remains. Air quality, waste proximity, and environmental burdens continue to follow patterns drawn in the 19th century. The history of smell, far from vanishing, left behind an invisible geography of inequality, one that shaped how people moved, where they lived, and how they were judged. When cities learned to erase smell, They gained something extraordinary, but they also lost something human. To live in a 19th century city was to smell its rhythms. Scent was not just pollution or discomfort, it was a form of perception. It revealed when the baker had fired his oven, when the tannery was in full swing, when the rains had stirred the waste in the gutter. It marked the seasons, the hours, the labor of the day. It connected people directly to their environment, whether they wanted it or not. Modern infrastructure promised relief from this intimacy. Sewers, drains, piped water, gas lamps, antiseptics, all of it worked to lift human life above the level of decay, and it succeeded. Today, most city dwellers encounter their own waste only through the faint hiss of a toilet flush. The air is filtered, deodorized, scented. The organic world is kept at arm's length. But this victory came with a cost, a kind of sensory disconnection. We no longer smell the life of our city. We no longer notice its vital signs through the air. And in that silence, something has changed in how we relate to place. We expect neutrality. We expect sterility. And when something smells, we assume something is wrong. Yet the history remains. Beneath our feet run vast tunnels, engineered to carry away what used to linger. Behind our walls, invisible systems hum and pump and cleanse. The odorless city is not natural. It is a triumph of technology and a testament to what human beings will do to make urban life bearable. But perhaps the faint memory of what came before, of smoke, of horse, of bread, of bodies, still shapes the way we imagine the past. Not in dates or maps, but in the nose, in what we no longer smell.